Hi, this is Savannah,
And this is Brian from the Dorky Diva Show,
and you're listening to Star Wars.
the best place for below average Star Wars.
Welcome to Star Wars, the best place for below average Star Wars.
Hello there, and welcome to the Star Wars Show, the best place for below average Star Wars. I'm the Geordie Jedi Pete, and joining me today, making his debut on the Star Wars podcast, is the Scouse Scoundrel, Ste. Ste, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm very well, thanks. How are you, Pete?
Awesome, yeah, I'm excited to talk Star Wars today with you, Ste. This will be obviously your first time on the episode, on the podcast. Yeah. Hopefully you'll enjoy it and you'll come back on for many more.
Oh, I'm sure I will.
So today we're going to be talking about the Rise of Kylo Ren, which is the four-issue graphic novel from Charles Soule. Before we go into reviewing that, there's been a few things hit sort of over the last few days on JediNews.com. So there's been, obviously, Hugh McGregor was on the Graham Norton show over the weekend, saying that the Obi-Wan Kenobi series will begin filming in March. Which
exciting.
It is, yeah. I mean, to me, sort of that makes sense. I'm pretty sure the last time he spoke about the project, he mentioned that it would be filming in the new year. So obviously March is in the new year, obviously 3 months into it. I feel pretty good about that. Apparently there's been problems with the script. When I say problems, I don't know whether it's just been problems or trying to make it better. But there's been rewrites going on behind the scenes. But to me, obviously, like with COVID hitting and sort of in productions getting sort of given a lot of downtime, I think it's been good. It means they can take the time on writing these scripts, get them exactly the way they want them. And it means when it comes to March, they've had extra time to sort of make the scripts as perfect as can be. It means when they come filming, they've probably got the best version of that script that they're going to have.
Yeah, I'd hope so.
And that is obviously Deborah Chow's going to be directing the whole series there as well, who obviously did an awesome job on the 2 episodes of Mandalorian that she did.
Yeah, of course, because there was quite a team of directors, wasn't there, on The Mandalorian? So I did notice that she was directing this too.
Yeah, so she's not back for season 2. Oh,
really?
Yes, obviously. She's obviously not just directing; I think she's like a big part of the project. So I think obviously, like she is working on Kenobi. So yeah, so she's not back to direct any episodes of The Mandalorian season 2, primarily because she's working on this new project.
All right.
So yeah, so I think on season 2 we've got less directors. I believe actually, I think we definitely got less writers. We've got less directors, but there's 2 new directors. Peyton Reed is joining. Who you might know from doing the Ant-Man movies.
Yes.
So that should be cool. It should bring some cool, quirky comedy to the series. And then also, I forgot his name now. Let me just Google it. Always when I'm on here. It's it's Quentin Tarantino's best mate. I know that. I know his name. It's just that my mind goes blank.
I'm hesitant to guess.
Go on, have a guess.
Nah, I can't.
You can go on.
Are you talking about one of the directors from the first series? Yeah.
No, he's new. He's new for this series.
Oh, sorry.
It's Quentin Tarantino's best friend. He did Spy Kids. He did Once Upon a Time in Mexico. That's probably what I should Google. Once Upon a Time in Mexico. Robert Rodriguez. There we go.
All right.
It's weird. Whenever like, because I know who he is. And I know what he's done. But whenever like, because I wasn't planning on going that way, I just couldn't pull the name out of my brain until I rejogged it. So yeah, so Robert Rodriguez, obviously he's done quite a lot of like big action movies, sort of
Well,
Tarantino-esque ones, and Spy Kids. So he's done like fun children's movies as well.
yeah, I'd be interested to see what he'll bring to it, just because like I think like for me, like I haven't got a long history with Star Wars, as you know, Pete. And so I think I started The Mandalorian. I probably did The Mandalorian before I watched the complete run of the films right the way through, I think, to tell you the truth. And that was actually what really triggered me into watching all the films over lockdown. And I whenever I watch have you seen the gallery series that was on Disney Plus?
Yes, that's brilliant. The making of the Mandalorian.
Yes, yeah, absolutely brilliant. Like it was for me, it was so interesting to see the production and how it all came together, especially with there being seven directors. As we mentioned just there, like so it'd be really interesting to see what it's going to be like when you introduce new directors into the mix and how that might change the feel of things for the second series. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think it's definitely going to give like a different sort of flavour,
Hmm.
which is a good thing because it means that your season 2 isn't going to be like the same story beats, the same flavour as your season 1. It's going to be
Hmm.
similar, but it's going to be different, so it's going to be intriguing. So yeah, definitely. Speaking of Mandalorian, that's the other news. Is obviously the season 2 episode air dates have been released. So
Hmm.
starting on Friday, the 30th of October, it's one episode every 7 days, every Friday, from the 30th of October till the 18th of December. So I know when season 1 did come out, we got like 2 episodes in the first week as like a little gift. And then around the release of the movie, The Rise of Skywalker, I know we got like an episode earlier. So it was
Hmm.
like before the movie, because the movie like released on like the Thursday, Friday. So we got the episode earlier. Obviously, there is no Star Wars movie this year, so
Hmm.
so yeah, it's every 7 days, every Friday from the October 30th till December 18th. Again, they get further updates on that and about who's writing and directing. Just go to JediNews.com. They've got all the articles on there about them.
And is that sorry, Pete? Is that a global release date?
It will be, yeah. So obviously Disney Plus wasn't in the UK when season 1 got released, or
Hmm.
in much of Europe either. So
Hmm.
it wasn't in many markets actually, I don't think. So yeah, it looks like it'll be everywhere that has Disney Plus will get that at the same time. Or the same day, I should say. Actual air times, I don't know. So I don't know if it'll go on midnight,
Yeah.
or if it'll go on in the evening, or if it'll go on like morning. I know, like
Hmm.
take Netflix UK for example. I know that Haunting of Bly Manor, their new sort of Halloween special series that's come out. So that was like on that release day, it dropped at like 8 a.m.
Hmm.
So for me, for Mandalorian, I don't want to miss spoilers. So what I would love is for it to drop at like maybe 4 or 5 a.m.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it means I can watch it before I go to work
Yeah.
and then not have anything spoiled by the
Hmm.
Twitter or the internet when you're accidentally scrolling
Yeah.
because of habit, and then you find stuff like that. But yeah, but exciting times. Glad to be getting some Star Wars back.
Hmm.
I think having Clone Wars come out during the like the beginning of the pandemic, like Clone Wars started to air, so
Hmm.
it was sort of really really cool to sort of have Clone Wars during the first lockdown while you had in the UK. So
Hmm.
as things, particularly here in the UK, sort of head towards maybe a possible second one, it'll be good to know we're going to get like a new Star Wars once a week, which will just help take our minds off the real world grit.
Yeah, definitely. But there's just so much content out there as well. Like for somebody like me who really only had an idea of what Star Wars and the whole franchise was about, like during lockdown, it was really something for me to explore. And obviously, the amount of context, the amount of narrative, and different materials that you find online. I spent days and days over lockdown just like crawling Wikipedia, and like you know finding little clips from Clone Wars and stuff like that, just like really like enriching the knowledge that I had. So it's really cool, as you say, to like be getting some more new material.
Definitely, yeah. And I think, like as you mentioned before, obviously you said, Steve, that obviously like the Mandalorian was sort of like the catalyst to you sort of diving a bit deeper into Star Wars.
Mm.
It's like entry points. So like everyone has a different entry point. So like, my entry point was the original trilogy, but it was because my cousin had them on VHS. Cause I was born in 1989, so sort of Star Wars had been and gone at that point.
Mm.
But when I was about 4, I went to my cousin's house and he had the VHS and I watched it there for the first time. And then by 1999, I'm already a Star Wars fan. And then sort of Star Wars was coming back to cinemas. And then like I got to experience the prequel trilogy sort of in cinemas. We won't go into too much this episode because we can talk about it forever, but like the Phantom Menace's like promotional push is like nothing you've ever seen in your life.
Yeah.
All over the world. It's crazy. From like having Cadbury chocolate bars that were in the shape of characters from the movie to
Oh, that's
pizza.
cool. I didn't know that.
Honestly, like it'll never happen again, and it'll never happen again. But like from everything, like you could get like I said, Cadbury's chocolate in the shape of characters from the movie. They had their own chocolate bar line essentially with Cadbury.
It's ringing a bell. It's ringing a bell actually. Now that you say it, I mean, I'm sure even like when you go to the cinema, there was so much heavy promo. There was so many things. Remember when you go and they'd be like, you buy popcorn and you get like something with your popcorn, like you get like a figure or something like that. They were really cool.
Yeah, and like every fast food place, it was like every fast food place they'd something. Pizza Hut, KFC, Pepsi. There's a trailer for Pepsi where there's like the Pepsi truck is about to fall off a cliff, and this guy is tried pulling all these ring pulls, and it's because you collect the ring pulls and send them off to get Star Wars merchandise, and like, yeah, it was all over, it was everywhere. Like I said, like by the time episode 2 comes around in 2002, it's not quite the same. But like I said, it never really no film or anything ever marketed the way the Phantom Menace did before it, and then no one's done it afterwards either. But like being around them where it was like everywhere, it was crazy. Absolutely crazy. So that's how I sort of my entry point. But you get like obviously Clone Wars. There's people who like Clone Wars is their entry point. There'll be children today who their entry point will be the new films.
Yeah,
That have
you're right.
come out, sort of this sort of sequel trilogy. So like there's lots of different entry points into Star Wars. What you find is people, whichever entry point they have, starts them off, and then before you know it, they sort of get pulled into everything else. It's almost like being an addict. But yeah, so it's great that The Mandalorian was sort of your entry point. It would have been a lot of other people's because it was the most successful show in the streaming era, I believe. So like, there's a lot of people who've watched that, and it was designed in a way where you could watch it without knowing the Star Wars saga, I believe.
Exactly, yeah. And I think, I don't mean to go off on too much of a tangent here, Pete, but, it's also just because of the way media is now. If you think of all the memes that came, like all the Baby Yoda stuff, the child stuff that came from The Mandalorian that just, like, stormed Twitter, stormed, like, all of the other social media platforms, it made it, like, really cool, really accessible to people who might not have had an interest before as well,
Yeah, definitely. I think people wanted to be able to talk about that. Obviously people are like, oh, Baby Yoda, what's that? And obviously they would go and tune in to Disney Plus to see that. Okay, let's dive into the Rise of Kylo Ren. So just to go through, sort of, it's a 4-issue limited run. It sort of ran from December to March. So December last year to March this year. Obviously, I picked up in trade paperback. It's written by Charles Soule, who, for me, every bit of Star Wars that he does, I find brilliant. He wrote the Poe Dameron comic run, 31-issue run. He wrote the Star Wars Darth Vader Doctor of the Sith run, which is my favourite Darth Vader comic so far. There's 25 issues of that. He's currently writing the ongoing Star Wars flagship line as well. And he is going to be a big part of Project Luminous, which is the High Republic stuff that's coming. And the art is by Will Sleaney, who I love the art of this book. We'll go into some of the details there, some of the characters, but I found some of the ideas in it crazy, like Snoke's planet, for example, where it's like one big giant greenhouse of a planet. which we'll dive into, and the look of Ren, the character Ren as well, I thought looks awesome. And I thought that you also did a great job with like legacy characters like Luke Skywalker and Lor San Tekka. And for Lucasfilm on the project, so the story group are sort of a group of people, the story executives, and what their job is. Their job is to sort of make sure all the stories tell the same continuity, tell the same canon.
It's consistent, right?
Yeah, so they won't necessarily tell a writer what to write about, but they will say like, oh, no, you can't use that character because in the history this character's not here yet. Or going to look for flags like that. Or the writer might go to the story and go, I need a character like this. Have you got any ideas? And I might go, oh yeah. And tell them that way. So for the Lucasfilm story, and this was Matt Martin, Pablo Hidalgo, James Watt, and Emily Shakugani. Obviously, Pablo Hidalgo is like the big one. He's got hired by Lucasfilm to work on. I believe he's working on like, it was like video blogs for the prequel trilogy.
All right.
Yeah, so like even before the internet was like huge, like George, like there was a lot of behind the scenes video blogs went up on StarWars.com in the early 2000s during production. I think he was part of that, and obviously now he's like a story executive within the company. And whenever I've heard him speak at conventions or sort of on the Star Wars show, like I just shut up and listen because he's a wealth of knowledge.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So like just diving straight into issue 1. Straight away, it's like long ago, and we're getting the Knights of Ren sort of a little bit of their backstory. Long ago, it doesn't really insinuate how long ago is, which is a bit of a pain in the arse because it's like I want to know details about them, but it also keeps it fresh because it's like keeps those questions there, which obviously keeps the mind wandering, which is always good. That's why Star Wars is so awesome, I think, because there's so many questions that keeps your mind thinking about it.
And also, I think one positive of that as well, it's you're not the details sometimes really important. I also think you can just focus on the actual story as opposed to sometimes I get a little bit I don't know, perhaps overwhelmed at trying to figure out where something fits in the timeline, and I think too much about it, especially when you're going between different stories. So like if you've been watching Clone Wars for argument's sake, and then you pick something up like this, I try to like readjust, oh, well, where are we in the timeline here? Like what's just happened or what's going to happen next? So long ago kind of just like sets a scene and says like, you can just be in this story, if you know what I mean, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. Like one of the things, obviously, continuity is important and normally BR is important, but also the story itself is more important. So like, what is this story telling us?
Agreed.
Because what normally is Star Wars is obviously primarily about hope, and it's about like human emotions, although it's like a big space spectacle. So like, what is this story going to tell us about like A, hope, and B, like human emotions and how the human soul and mind works? And we'll get quite a lot in this comic about that. So it's an ice planet that we start on, which I'm not quite sure which one it is. It doesn't tell you. So in the Star Wars comics, it often tells you what planet people are on. Obviously, so that's something that they've done. They've chose not to do that. That is a story choice, which is cool. Same with the story choice to just say long ago and not actually give it time. And we met with this guy called. He says, "I am called Ren." That's the first frame. And you see this guy, and he's got like no top on. He's quite muscular. I don't know if he's been burned or had something spilled on him. I don't know if that's like the muscle underneath his skin that's on the show there.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. That's what it looks like.
Yeah, so like he's quite like a. I mean, it's a snowy planet, and this guy's got no top on. And he's like crouched down. And like I said, I think like it looks like he's had his skin grafted from his body, either by burns or by something else. And he's wearing a helmet which has some sort of inscription on the front of it. It's not Arabic, which is like the basic language in Star Wars. So I don't know if it's maybe some sort of dark side writing or what. Maybe we'll get more of that later on in another story. And sort of the whole sort of this comic is that like the Knights of Ren have went into this place, this planet, and they've killed a lot of people. We don't know why. And there's sort of two sort of youngsters, teenagers maybe, who are left over. And Ren says you can become a Knight of Ren. You just need to have one good kill. And he says that he senses the shadow in one of them, and you need to have the shadow to join. And what he means by the shadow is the dark side of the Force.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's what's implied. And the sort of the brother who's got the shadow sort of doesn't really want to do that, and the other brother shoots him in the back, and he's a bit like, sort of actually says to him, "There you go, let's get out of here." And then Ren's a bit like, like maybe, but you don't have the shadow, and then kills him as well.
It throws you straight into it. Like it's action from the off. Do you know what I mean? Like you're talking like what? You're talking like page 3 or something, page 4, I think it is. Like for somebody who's perhaps not used to reading comics either, or any sort of graphic novel like this, you're like, it throws you straight away. Do you know what I mean? Like you're thrown around straight into the story and figuring out like what's going on here.
Yeah, definitely. I think like it was a really cool opening because we've sort of seen pictures of the Knights of Ren before, but this Ren guy is like a new character, and he's obviously the leader of them before Kylo Ren. So that was to sort of get him in the first panel, and then obviously to see how these guys act, and the fact that they've killed everyone, and then they didn't even let the kid who did what they wanted to join them. They've killed him as well, and then sort of there's a panel where like, what now? And Ren just says, "Let's go find something to burn." So they're obviously quite like a lawless, like, you know, they're not. Although it sounds like the dark side Force users, they're not like Sith. They haven't got a master plan, and they are just running around aimlessly. One of the cool things about this I found was that obviously you mentioned the shadow, and that you've got to have the shadow to join them. And if the shadow is the dark side of the Force, so I didn't realize before this book that all of the Knights of Ren were Force users or Force sensitives, which is what it implies. That was a cool like tidbit there.
Yeah.
It always made us think, like, I wish I'd seen them use the Force in the movie The Rise of Skywalker. So like I don't think we do see them use the Force in the movie.
No, I don't think we do.
But obviously, like, this is insinuating that they can. I mean, we don't see them use it in the comic either, to be honest with you. But the fact that he mentions that says a lot. Sort of the next page, sort of now, the Jedi Temple of Luke Skywalker. Again, they're choosing not to name that planet, which we've seen in The Last Jedi. But again, it wasn't named, and it hasn't been named here either. So they are keeping that information to one side for now, it seems. And I love this first panel where it's Ben Solo in front of the temple. The temple's on fire, and to me, it resonates straight away with sort of the Luke Skywalker kneeling in front of the temple from the Last Jedi flashbacks.
Yeah, it like the graphic, the style of the graphic really like sets a tone, you know, like especially because you've come from that first section where they're on that ice planet, like you said, and it goes straight from cold, it's straight into the flames. Do you know what I mean? And I think like there's such a juxtaposition between those two spaces in the story. That, like you say, yeah, the first opening panel, and in fact the one at the bottom of the page too, it's like the graphics, you feel the change in terms of location, right?
Yeah, 100%. And also sort of what's going on. So like, sort of those Knights of Ren just attack that ice planet, kill everyone, and then they're just like, oh, we're just going to go somewhere else now because we don't care. Where like this is like the fire is happening. You see Ben Solo's face there, and he's like looking like lost and concerned, and like it's sort of the opposite. He's not carefree. He's got like a lot on his mind, and he's probably going through a lot right now.
But it's the same but different. Like there's such a juxtaposition, because you go from like the previous. I'm just going to call it a scene here, but you go from like the previous scene where you have the Knights of Ren, you have all those people that are laid, and it's kind of a big open space. And then you jump to somewhere else, and it's the same scene, but it's different. There's nobody there. There's fire. It's hot. There's just one person with his thoughts. Do you know what I mean? So I think it's like a pretty cool juxtaposition.
Definitely. And then we see sort of a ship arriving with 3 Jedi apprentices on it. It is Vo, who is the female. It is Henix, who is the squid head. I've forgotten their species name. They live on. Do you know who Adam Rockbar is in the Mon Calamari?
I don't. I mean, I definitely would, but
So do you know Return of the Jedi when there's the one who says it's a trap? He's a meme as well, very famous meme.
yes.
So this guy, yeah, obviously different species, but they live on the same planet. So like that planet has 2 different species that live there. I think it's called the Quarren. So the Quarren and the Mon Calamari live on Mon Cala.
Yes.
And they're both like underwater species. But so the reason why I call him Squid Head is because when the figure originally come out, because he was featured, that species is featured in the original trilogy.
Yeah.
Like he was just called Squid Head, I believe, before they give a name. But yeah, but he's a Quarren. And then we have Ty, who is the male humanoid who seems to have quite a good connection with Ben.
Yeah, definitely. They are connected, right?
I think so. Yeah, definitely in some sort of way. So we see the ship land and it's these guys. So these guys have obviously been somewhere else on a mission or training or picking up supplies, whatever it's been. They've come back to see the temple on fire, and sort of they can't sense anything. And then Ty says he can sense Ben, and then you see them coming up behind Ben. And they're like, "Where's Master Luke?" And Luke tells them that he attacked him, tried to kill him in his sleep, and now he's dead. That's what Ben says. Obviously, we know he's not because we've seen the movie. And these Jedi straight away go to 2 of them, sort of Henix and Vo, are very much like, what have you done? And it's only Ty who's a bit like, let's all calm down. That's like something else has happened to you. I just need to settle down. But it's obviously like sort of throwing fuel on the fire, so to speak. And sort of those 2 end up igniting the lightsabers, and Ben warns them, don't start. I won't be responsible for what happens if you force me to fight them. They're quite arrogant and they come at him anyway, and he uses the Force and he pushes them all away. One of them ends up getting injured. And so they have to treat him, and Ben walks away. I sort of love this because it's a bit like, obviously, we don't know, the temple's on fire. At this point in the story, we don't know who's caused it. Do you know what I mean? So Ben's sort of standing there, and maybe he's like, doesn't know either. And then these guys have turned up and are like, we want answers. And like, Ben doesn't even have the answers himself. He's still trying to figure out the situation he's been in. All he knows is that Luke Skywalker has just was in the house with him with the lightsaber turned on.
And you can. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Well, it's just you can see the conflict in him, as you said. Like, you can see that he's trying to piece together exactly what's happened, but you can see the conflict. And as he says, when he says like, I'm not going to be responsible. When Vo and Henix are kind of gearing up to initiate like a conflict between them, you can see, and it's clearly framed, the conflict. And I think, like, for me, that's actually why Ben Solo or Kylo Ren is probably my favorite character, to tell you the truth, because you can see the conflict there from the off, and I think it's very much a metaphor. I'm getting quite deep here, Pete, but I think it's quite a metaphor in terms of like being a relatable character, because I think everybody has those 2 sides to them, where sometimes people feel pulled in one direction or the other. And I think for me, that's why he's such an easy character to connect with, and it's good to see him in the story and to have this story crafted around him.
I mean, I think you bang on there. So obviously, the main problem Ben has is that from such a young age, he's getting pulled in so many different directions. There's like the pull of his father, like being a really good pilot. There's the pull of his uncle, sort of becoming a Jedi, and then there's the pull of like these voices in his head, which, as you see it on the comic, like, do you know what I mean? Snoke's in his head already, like even before this, talking to him. So he's got that in his head as well. So do you know what I mean? He's getting pulled all over the place. He doesn't really know who he is, and he sort of struggles with that. And then doesn't help the fact that sort of Snoke is setting things up to sort of push him this way, and he ends up going that way. But yeah, I think Ben Solo's my favorite character. I class Ben Solo and Kylo as sort of the same thing. Probably my favorite character from the sequel trilogy, just because of how deep and how confused he is, and sort of the pull of the light and the dark. They're almost fighting over him, like two powers of the Force.
There's such an arch to him as a character.
Yeah, definitely. So we see that he goes to his ship. He never wanted to fight those guys. He told them he didn't want to fight. He said, if you do fight, I'm not responsible. And then even when they did start to fight him, he sort of fought them in a humane way. He pushed them away with the Force. Yes, one got injured, but even when that happens, you see Ben's face like, oh, right, I didn't want that to happen, but like, he's pushing us here. But even then, he hasn't like tried to stab them or anything. He has like, it's all been sort of self-defensive moves so far. Obviously, he has injured the Quarren, Hennix, but again, it's not life-threatening. And again, he's tried his best to be non-violent with them so far. He gets to his ship. You meet his droid. He's obviously got a good relationship with his droid by the dialogue we get here. But the droid asks what's happening. It's on fire. And Ben's like, everything is fine. And it's like, it's sort of again like metaphoric of like, I mean, the temple's not fine, but also like everything's not fine. Like Ben is not fine. Like what's just happened is crazy. Like, do you know what I mean? Like his uncle is just him and his uncle just had a confrontation which should never have happened, and it's like led to this. And you see Ben activate the ship, and Ben is running away. And he's sort of running away because you could say because of how those three Jedi have talked to him there. Do you know what I mean? They've come back and they've been hostile towards him a little bit. Obviously not knowing what's going on, and he's thought the best thing to do for me now is to run. Which is funny because it's the same thing Luke does after this as well. They both do the same thing. They both run away here. So definitely a bit of sort of poetry going on with that. See Ben in his ship. The droid's like, you haven't been home in a while, which I think is quite a telling comment. And set course for the Hosnian system, which is where obviously his mum, Leia Organa Solo, is. I'm trying to think at this point, she's probably not part of the Senate anymore.
I think they still refer to her as senator. I think.
So there's something that happens, which again it comes into like how subtle all the references are in the books. So there was a book called, I've forgotten the name now. It's written by Claudia Gray, and it was like centered on Leia Organa.
It's not. I've only read one book by Claudia Gray. What was it called?
Lost Stars.
Lost Stars. Yeah, that's the one that's the one that I've read.
That's an awesome book. That's my favorite book. So a follow-up book to that was I've forgotten the name of it now. Let me just have a look.
It's by Claudia Gray.
Yeah. So the book centers on Leia, being sort of in the new Senate. And what actually happens is she ends up. So the secret gets out that her father was Darth Vader, was Anakin Skywalker, and that like ruins that political career, like a political scandal. But what you find out is that like the Han knew, for example, Luke and Leia obviously knew, but they hadn't told anyone out of that group of people. So like Ben doesn't know. So like Ben probably finds out through the HoloNet, or like which is like a news outlet type of thing. It's like imagine finding out that like you're training with your Uncle Luke to be a Jedi, and then you find out that actually your grandfather was Darth Vader. No one's told us this. I've just found out on the news. And it's only a small part of that story, but to me it said a lot about like again why Ben's feels lost and pushed away. Because it's like no one told us this, and I've had to fight you as if they were hiding it as a secret.
Mm-hmm.
Where if they'd been like open and honest, like, look, this is the situation. Obviously, it's not good, and your grandfather did make mistakes.
Mm-hmm. And then
And at the end,
he's grappling with a connection.
yeah, and then obviously, but your grandfather at the end made the right choice and saved his son, like saved Luke, and then like turned back to the good side, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
But instead, the narrative isn't driven that way because they don't try to tell him, and the narrative's just like he learns through the HoloNet essentially, which is sort of not a good thing. So I don't know if that has happened by this point or not because it doesn't really reference it. But if that has, then he's already like again that's another thing. The things pile up on Ben Solo where like he is indeed doesn't know where he's coming or going.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, he decides sort of before he decides where they're going to go. Obviously, the Jedi apprentices get back in their ship, which is quite cool. It looks like a sort of a cross between a sort of Y-wing and an X-wing,
Yeah.
which was quite cool. It looks pretty old, but also looks very Star Wars, which is very cool. Keeps in time with like the original trilogy, which obviously this story is set in between the original and the sequel trilogy, so that ship design fits right in. And Ben's ship design, I really liked how it was like the ship itself isn't round, but the way that engine coils round, it's
Mm-hmm.
very much like the Falcon, like his
Yeah,
father's
I
ship.
agree. That's what you see in it, isn't it? I think it's intent. It's definitely intentional.
Definitely, yeah. 100%. So I really enjoyed that. It was really cool. It's not just generic. It's like it looks like it fits in the Star Wars universe, and Big Ben's ship like does tie into like his father's ship because whether he denies it or not, like he is very much his father's son. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the Jedi give chase, and Ben ends up flinging the ship around, shoots them, takes out the engines. I think it is.
Yeah, it's the main engine.
Yeah, and then he gets away, proving that he's a very good pilot, just like his father. Do you know what I mean? He's managed to do a quick maneuver, and he attacks them. Without again, here he doesn't hurt them. He could kill them here right now if he wants to, blow the ship up. And then Void references that, like, oh, he could have killed Wall.
Yes, yeah.
But he doesn't. He just leaves them stranded, healthy. And then he says, that's when the droid says, I have a route for Hosnian Prime, pre-calculated China it. And that's when you see Ben and we see a thought bubble, and it's not his voice, it is Snoke's voice in his head. And Snoke's like, it happened, did it not? We both thought it might. Skywalker feared you, your strength. He was always small. And then we get to see that flashback from The Last Jedi again with Luke and Ben in the hut. And then we get a bit more of the story here, which it's not quite what I was expecting. I was expecting like a black and white answer about the temple. And we don't get that, but we get Ben sort of emerging from the ruined hut that Luke Skywalker's unconscious in. Sort of him looking towards the temple. Temple's looking fine. It's a nice night. He's sort of shouting, why? Why did you do it? And again, I think he has a bit like, he's asking Luke why he did what he did. And I think he's also talking to himself, like, why did I react in that way?
Mm-hmm.
And then we see, like, all of a sudden, like, clouds come over the temple in red. And then there's an explosion from, like, the bottom of it, by the looks of it, in the panel. And Ben gets forced back by the explosion. And then when he gets up, like, it's all on fire. And then there's another explosion, gets pushed back again. And while that's happening, Snoke's still talking to him. And you did not choose it, Ben. The Jedi did, Skywalker. And that's when Ben says, no, not the Hosnian Prime. I'm going somewhere else. What were your thoughts on sort of the temple and how it got set on fire?
I think I mean again, like the imagery of it's incredible. I think it's really good. You can feel it, you can feel the atmosphere. And I think what's really interesting is, as you just mentioned there about his kind of connection to the voice that he can hear in his head, Snoke's voice. It's like he's striking at a time where he's vulnerable, and you can see like the conflict isn't just within him, but it's outside of him. The conflict's everywhere, and I think that's very much represented by the temple, and the flames that are on the temple. And I think it's quite it's imagery to symbolize that he doesn't have much control here, or so you would think. He hasn't got much control here. This stuff is happening. He has no control over the temple exploding. It just explodes, and he's thrown back by it. And then he obviously remarks that he didn't want this. And as you say, then he hears that, you know, and you did not choose it, Ben. The Jedi did, Skywalker, and then he's back into the current moment. So yeah, I think, as I say, I think there's a lot of metaphors, and obviously that's what this run's all about. It's about putting things and displaying it visually. Obviously, there's so much more imagery through this than dialogue.
Yeah, I think that's why it lends itself to the medium of comic books like so well. It's funny because like years before now, sort of, I used to ask myself like, how would you want this story of like the fall of Ben Solo told? And I was always like, I think we'll make a great comic book. And then, although this isn't like the complete fall of Ben Solo, but it is part of it, and we all get in a comic book. But again, I love it. You're right about the visuals. One thing for me is obviously it answers the question, because it was always implied that Ben burnt the temple down after what happened with Luke.
Yes, yeah.
But as we see here, it answers the question that looks like Ben didn't. And I think if Ben had caused the explosion with the Force, I think you would have said that here, but he doesn't. So it answers the question that I don't think Ben did it, but it doesn't answer the question of who did. And then it's a bit like, go on.
I think it mirrors, or well, until, like you said, I had assumed that Ben had burnt the temple down, and I always thought that it was to mirror when Anakin goes out to try and save his mum, and he then burns down or like the tents where his mum's being held after slaughtering everything that was there. But obviously, this then shows you that actually, like, it wasn't exactly the same sort of situation. So I think it's very cool to get that added context, you know.
Definitely. And I think one of the things for me is that the place of like the Snoke's thought bubbles, where like, and you did not choose it, Ben, the Jedi did, Skywalker, like after the second explosion. And I'm thinking, has Snoke somehow caused this to happen at this time? Because if them Jedi come back and the temple's not on fire, and then they talk to Ben and they're sorted out, and then Luke comes out the thing alive, and then Luke's just like, oh, look, Ben, yeah, we shouldn't, this is crazy, we're both acting like idiots here. Then they might sort it out, but because it happened, Luke does what he does, and then the temple blows up, it just leads to like a spiral of like out of control events happening.
Yeah, you're right.
So we don't know if it is Snoke, but I think it implies with like the placement of the thought bubbles in these panels of Snoke in Ben's head. If you look at it in place of like when the explosions happen, it's very like, I don't know, they place them in a way which makes you think that, is what I think. So
Yeah,
we're not,
it doesn't seem reactive.
Yeah, so we don't know for sure, but I think perhaps Snoke's behind it. But we don't know, which is great. That's one of the things it's a question that like, it's answered half a question, but still left a lot for you to think about. Which is cool. And then we see again the next panel, sort of after the Jedi are trying to fix the ship that they're in, and then they decide that they're going to go after. I mean, even here, these Jedi, they talk about maybe getting in touch with Senator. Well, yeah, the reference are Senator Garnash, which is still in the Senate at this point. Or maybe they're just called out by a title still. We don't know.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, she'll call his mother, and like they decide not to because they're scared to. And it's like, if you had it again, there's a chance he after got in touch with his mum straight away, things might have ended up a little bit differently. But they don't. They decide to go after him, almost seeking revenge for Master Skywalker.
Well, it seems to me like I get the vibe that Ty specifically is very much about keeping the peace and practicing like the Jedi way, and it seems that Vo seems to be a little bit more focused on on the avenge piece.
Yeah.
And so it kind of seems like though they reach that consensus that they're going to go after him, even amongst those two individuals from the trio, it seems like they have conflicting agendas as to why they're going to do that, but they still go on ahead and do it as a collective.
Yeah, definitely. And then the next panel, we've got Elsewhere. So again, they were sort of not getting the name of where we are on purpose, unless that is actually the name of this station. And it's almost like a giant spherical greenhouse, with like metallic rings around it, like a space station that's around a greenhouse.
It's very cool. Very
And
cool.
inside the spherical greenhouse, it looks very green and luscious. But then, like, coming out of it into space, there's like black vines, black trees. That looks quite sort of unnatural, sort of dark side type thing. And then the next thing's probably not my favourite for news, but it's like really made us laugh. Was see Snoke saying "my boy," and he's got like a little throne there made out of rocks, and like Snoke's wearing like a hat and green robes, sort of trying to play the normal man right here.
Well, then he embraces him, doesn't he? It's because he then embraces Ben. Like that's not something that you expect to see, or something that I certainly didn't expect to see.
Yeah, I mean it's quite telling because have you played the Jedi Fallen Order game?
Sorry,
Have you played Jedi Fallen Order?
I have. Yes, yes.
So something that I thought like the brown parts of Snoke's robes reminded me a bit of like the Zepho statues.
Do you know what? I see it. I see it now, and I hadn't noticed before, but I see it.
So I don't know if it is, but it just the design is similar. So I don't know if like also we don't really know much about Snoke's background, but maybe it's linked to that. Maybe it's just a coincidence. But yeah, so Snoke's got this hat on, this gown. He's looking very sort of he's in this Garden of Eden almost type of thing. Which again I think it's meant to represent sort of temptation maybe. And then what we see is him sort of Snoke embracing Ben, like you said. And then Ben says, Snoke, look what Master Luke did to you. So it's never been implied why Snoke's deformed.
Mm-hmm.
But here I would see Ben implying that Luke Skywalker has fought Snoke and caused him to look deformed.
Mm-hmm.
But Snoke does just say never mind that. So Snoke doesn't really reference it, he moves on. So who knows? But I think that's a cool idea.
Mm-hmm.
If Luke has fought Snoke before, but I don't know, maybe Snoke set that up to look that way. Maybe that's never actually happened. If you know what I mean.
Well, yeah. There's a lot of manipulation going on here, isn't there? And I don't know much about Snoke's background actually.
So no one does.
Yeah, but he's interesting nonetheless.
Yeah. So in the Rise of Skywalker, obviously it's pretty much implied that Palpatine says he made Snoke.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, that's the one thing that sticks with me.
Yeah, and there's also like a jar of Snokes in the background of that shot,
Mm-hmm.
of like failed ones. So it's not my favorite part of Rise of Skywalker, I must admit. But it's one of those things where like maybe the Sith did make Snoke, like physically made him out of like biology and science. But the question is, does Snoke have his own like devices? Does Snoke think for himself?
Yeah.
And I think he does.
You mean. You do.
I think he do. I could be wrong, but it hasn't been answered yet. But I get the impression that Snoke's doing his own. I don't think Snoke's working directly for Palpatine.
You don't.
But I think Palpatine's made him, and what Snoke's doing is helping Palpatine, but Snoke's not aware of that.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I always perceived that he purely was a puppet. I didn't take from it
Could
he
be.
might. Yeah. So I mean, I'm seeing it as from a different perspective as you. And I guess the point is, as you say, we don't know whether he's driven by his own motivations or whether he is simply a like a prong, or I think you might say, that's being controlled directly by Palpatine.
Yeah. So we see here sort of Snoke's being very nice to him. He's very manipulative. He's grooming. You can sense that he's groomed Ben, and he's still grooming him now, and he's grooming him in like a nice way. And Snoke's like, what's next for you? Ben's like, I've been thinking, and then about the Knights of Ren. We see the shot of the Knights of Ren on their ship, like you see in the Rise of Skywalker, and obviously Ren is there still as well. And then we move on to issue number 2 coming up next. So my overall thoughts on issue 1 was I thought we got a great introduction to Ren and the Knights. Obviously, that really cool inside information about the Knights being Force sensitive with the shadow. And I loved how sort of the stuff at the temple, how it was straight into the action, and it was like, yeah, there's a temple on fire, but the events of that Jedi have happened, like in the flashback, and it's like, oh, guess what? We're not going to tell you who caused the temple. So sort of answered the question that wasn't Ben, but sort of not going to tell you who, so it keeps the questions going, which again is a lot of fun. What were your sort of overall thoughts on part 1?
For me, as I say, with Ben Solo being one of my favorite characters, I from the off was invested because it's just that added context, and I love that. I love that every character in Star Wars has a backstory, right? Like no characters are a mistake, and even for those characters that might not seem to have much of a backstory or have an air of mystery about them that's not shared with the audience. They're still, everything about them is intentional, and so I just love the extra context, the added context, and I like the way you move through. You move through 4 different spaces, and like really, like after finishing this first section, to me it was really just like a flavor. Like I couldn't have imagined having that one standalone section. I'm glad that I had the full collection to be able to move on to issue 2. Because straight away it's so good, and like I say, there's a different vibe to each of the different planets that they take you to, or the different settings rather. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. I'd really recommend it to anybody who's not tried any issues like this before.
Yeah. Awesome. Then, so issue 2 sort of starts with sort of Ben and Snoke. Snoke mentions that the place they're in, they're trying to create just with the light side of the Force. But as you can see, like, there's like dead skeletons of creatures and animals and maybe people. And he's like, but as you can see, like the shadow is here, and it's sort of referencing balance in the Force, and you need life and death. Sort of is all part of living. I thought it was really subtle how they sort of blend that in. And then Snoke sort of goes straight back from that to the Knights of Ren. So again, he's still being very manipulative here. And then Snoke points out here, but I should say, Ben Solo, Jedi to be, the Knights of Ren might not be interested in him. Ben's like, I hate that name. Goes into talk how his name's a legendary name. Obviously, Ben, after Obi-Wan Kenobi. And then obviously Solo, his father. And how those things are a lie. Obviously, it's referencing that. Have you seen the Han Solo film yet, Steve?
I have, yes, I have.
So obviously, it's referencing the tale that obviously he didn't really have a last name, and that his last name is Solo because he was alone. And he sees that as a lie. And obviously, being called Obi-Wan Kenobi, he's like, I never met Ben Kenobi. And then we get a cool little thing here where there's a transmission incoming from General Hux. And Snoke says, I see, tell Brendel whatever it is, we'll have to wait. I'm in the midst of an important conversation. And the droid says, acknowledged. And then Ben's like, oh, who did the droid mean? Who is General Hux? And I may not be the most sociable person being in the galaxy, but you're not my only friend, Ben. In any case, that means that'll speak no more of lies. And it's sort of like, he's not lying, he's dodging the question there. And by saying let's not speak more of lies, sort of taking a dig at Luke and the Jedi. But he's actually deceiving Ben right here because he's not telling the truth. Because at this point we don't know sort of the situation of the First Order. But Hux is obviously general of the First Order at this point, as we can tell, and he's in contact with Snoke. So Snoke is hiding the fact that he is the Supreme Leader here, in my opinion. So he's being deceitful while pretending to not be deceitful and calling Luke Skywalker deceitful, but he's actually doing the same thing right here.
It's irony.
Snoke says, definitely, yeah, and like Ben can't say it, and it's a bit tragic as well. Like sort of, like, do you know what I mean? Like sort of Snoke sort of orchestrated this almost, and
it's playing right into his hands. It's going exactly how he wants it to go.
Yeah, and you sort of don't blame Ben for reacting how he's reacting because that's how anyone would react probably. But you see Snoke here go, you'll have to have a name for when the Knights of Ren come, and Snoke's like, obviously the dark side people embrace new names to become the true selves, which is sort of what happens with the Sith Lords. So although Snoke's not a Sith, obviously the Sith, obviously Anakin Skywalker became Darth Vader, Palpatine became Darth Sidious, Count Dooku became Darth Tyrannus. They sort of embrace these new names, and it becomes them and embodies them. And it sort of means that, like, it's meant to take you away from your past. So whatever good you've done in your past, like, you're not that person anymore, you're this name now, and it's this identity, and it's just meant to overcome you with, like, the dark side, if that makes sense. So he's like, I was born Snoke. Sorry, I was not born Snoke, I became Snoke, which I find interesting, because to me that says that either Snoke's telling one big lie here, or, like, Snoke, although he's created by Palpatine, like, has lived a life, if that makes sense.
Yeah, as opposed to being created and being who he is now at this moment from the off. It's very interesting because, as you say, he's misleading Ben from the off here. So even as a reader, you don't know, like you just don't know.
Yeah, and it would be interesting to see if, like, Palpatine did create him and then let him loose in the world, and he went about his business and became Snoke off his own being. But or whether, like, this is a lie that he's telling again, like, it's hard. And he's like, who will you become? And Ben's like, he senses the name of Ben's head. Ben says, stupid, it was a name I thought of when I was a child. And Snoke's like, that is why it is correct. And then you see Snoke using the Force on, like, those dark, evil, black vines. It's hard to tell if the vines are if they're, like, robotic. But I get the impression they're probably like plants, I think, because
I think
of where they
so.
are. But and obviously the name is Kylo, which he obviously named himself when he was younger. Obviously Kylo being Kai being Sky, and Lo being Solo. It's a combination of both his legendary family. Which I don't know if you knew that.
Do you know what? I didn't know that. I'm humming along because I'm very impressed. Honestly, I've got to say that's pretty cool. I can't believe that I didn't know that, Peter. It's shameful.
Well, I didn't know it till, like, I don't know, probably when, I don't know.
It's just one of those light bulb things, I think. Whenever you hear it, you go, I like that. It's cool.
Yes, obviously, we got introduced to his name in, like, 2015, and I'm pretty sure I didn't, like, get that connection until I was, like, 2017, so that's, like, a few years down the line.
And I like that. It's a bit of trivia.
Yeah, and in this book, yeah, like, it identifies that, like, although it doesn't say it, it tells you, like, that is what that is. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, so it's sort of like, even though he's changing his name because he doesn't like his legacy, his actual new name for himself embodies both his Skywalker blood and his Solo blood. Which again is part of the thing where, like, he can't let go of who he is, even though that's what he's trying to do. And then Snoke's like, you'll have to find them yourself, the Knights of Ren, that is. And when you do find them, you must not fail. You'll either join the Knights of Ren or you'll die, which obviously, as we saw in that first issue, those two kids, obviously, both died, didn't join them. And it's very much it's black or white with the Knights of Ren, it seems like. And then we jump into another flashback years earlier. Obviously, Snoke says in this page before, and obviously, like, you and Luke have seen them before, so we'll maybe start there. And then we go back here, and then we see the same ship that the Jedi been flying. It looks a bit newer. It's got a better paint job on. And it's Luke, Jedi Master, with Lor San Tekka. So do you know Lor San Tekka from the beginning of The Force Awakens?
I didn't register it until just now.
Yeah, so
I
if you
think
remember the
it's
beginning of The Force Awakens.
I think it's because some of these characters, because the way they're illustrated, like they're illustrated with a liking, right? But I think it wasn't something that I twigged initially.
Well, he's a very minor character, so.
Mm.
But obviously, if you read the Poe Dameron comic, Lor's like a big part of that when it gets going.
Yes.
So like if you're familiar with him from other stories, and he weaves his way in. But obviously, because this is your first sort of flutter into sort of Star Wars books and comics, you haven't had that exposure to him. So I think it's obviously that opening scene where Kylo cuts him down. Like you sort of see here that like he knew Ben as a child, and Ben knows who he is when he cuts him down. It makes it a bit more sort of makes that scene when you watch it again, I guarantee. Like, oh, come on, Ben! Like you've been on adventures with this man. Now you're just going to cut him. He's unarmed, and you're going to cut him down right there. So yeah, it adds to that. So obviously you've got Lor San Tekka, who's not a Jedi, but he's very much believes in the Force, believes in the Jedi, and he's like a historian. So he's helping Luke find artifacts and piece together the history of the Jedi. And here he is on a mission with young Ben. But even here, you see the Snoke thought bubbles. Is all well, my friend. I sense disquiet in you. And you see Ben answering him back as well with his mind. So again, you see that like the manipulation and the grooming has been there for a long time.
Yeah, it looks like it's probably always been there.
Yeah. And we see that he sort of Snoke trying to put the stuff in about like, oh, like Luke's holding you back, and Ben's like, yeah, he's not teaching us very much. Don't use any power. But obviously, as we know, like the Jedi do take the time. It's one of the things that Anakin felt the Jedi were holding them back, but it's because no, like we take it slow and teach you when they're standing. And then we see a really cool thing here where Luke says, "I'm glad you came along, Ben," and like looks at him as he says it. And that was a really nice moment, I thought. And then we see that this planet gets a name. It is Elfrona. And the temple looks absolutely spectacular.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's got the Jedi symbol right in the middle. It's got 2 statues of Jedi Knights. It's all intact, as opposed to Rogue One, where we see the Jedi statues in the sand, knocked over on Jeddah. I don't know if you've seen Rogue One, but
yes, yeah, I've seen more.
So when they land in the U-wing, it sort of flies over like a knocked over Jedi statue, like a large one, like similar to the size of these. But obviously, yeah, it's all intact. Obviously, no one's been. And then they can't believe how intact it is, actually. And they're like, I can't believe it's intact. The entrance looks good. Luke's like, we need to be careful. Could be booby-trapped. Ben agrees. And then I believe this is where we get our first mention of the High Republic. I'm just trying to find the line.
Yeah, I read it over.
Because it looks like this isn't outpost, it's a treasure trove. And then Lor's a bit like the Jedi at the time used it as a storage site, unable to return to gather these items. And Luke references this might even be better than Jacassa New's cache. So Jacassa New, that ties back to the Charles Soule Darth Vader Dark Lord of the Sith run, where I think it's in the second volume of that. Jacassa New goes back to Coruscant, actually gets caught, but she's got like a little trove where she's got loads of records, and just trying to keep information for the Jedi Order to keep it alive. So it sounds like maybe Luke found that cache sometime between then and now, which is quite cool. And then I love this bit. I don't know, you probably haven't seen Star Wars Rebels, but there's like the dark side of the Force is associated with the feeling of cold. So when it says it's wonderful, Master, truly. And then it cuts to the next time. It's like, wait, do you sense that it feels? And they both say cold. It's like the dark side has a feeling of cold. So like that really ties into how the dark side's interpreted throughout the entire Star Wars saga.
Yeah.
Which I sort of love. I love how we're getting that right there.
Yeah, me too. No, it's really cool.
And then we see sort of Ren and the Knights. And he's a bit like, Ren's being a bit cheeky. And then Luke's like, you're wrong, so wrong, which I loved.
Well, he comes straight in and he's saying everything here is ours. And like he's claiming it. He's walked straight in and he's like, right, this is ours.
Yep. And then Luke's like, I love how like assertive Luke is here. And then Luke says, look, this belongs to the Jedi Order, which at the moment means me. I am the last Jedi, which I love that line as well. And then the next panel, though not for long. And then we see Ben. So we do see like Luke has like trust in Ben. Obviously, the events happen in the temple. Obviously, there he doesn't quite believe it there, but he does have thoughts here where like he is like, Ben is the future of the Jedi Order. And then sort of Ren has a bit of a go at him. Then you see Ben here. This is Jedi Master Luke Skywalker. He is a legend, which I thought was really cool to see. Sort of a younger Ben, sort of in love with his uncle, which was cool. Excuse me. And he's like, I am Ren. He's the Knights of Ren, and we are legendary. And then he ignites that lightsaber. And then, so essentially, Luke tells Ben to look after Lor San Tekka and get him out of the battle. And then Ben's a bit like, will you be all right to sever them? And then Luke's just like, oh, I'll be just fine. Which again, I love that sort of assertiveness from Luke Skywalker.
But he's also asserting that belief that he has in Ben too. When he's saying Ben protects him.
Yeah, 100%, which is absolutely brilliant. And it goes on to share, like, he ignites the lightsaber, and he's like, the Knights are like, take him, he's only one man. And then Luke's like, I am one man, but I am not alone. And he goes and like Luke's belief in the Force. The Force is my ally, and it is powerful. And that also ties into like what Yoda taught Luke about the Force. It's not word for word, but it's like the like Yoda tells Luke the Force is an ally, and a powerful ally it is. Which is what Yoda says to him, and then he's learned so much. And then he deals with them, and Lor's watching. He says "magnificent," which is really cool. And Luke makes them pretty much unarms all them with the Force. That Ren ignites. Has like a bomb on his lightsaber that he activates. And he says like, "If you kill me," because Ren knows here that Luke will kill him. If they have a battle. So he says, if this lightsaber falls on my hand, it's going to blow up and destroy you all. And then, so I'm just going to go now, please. Which is funny because like, I'm sure Luke gave him the option at the beginning. Why just go now? And then he ends up taking that option here. It's time for you to leave. And then he leaves. But then before he does that, he says that he takes his mask off, and we'll see the sort of handsome chap with grey hair. His face hasn't been burned or scarred or cut.
Which I would say probably insinuates that he's been wearing the helmet or the mask for a long while.
Yep, definitely. And we haven't really got much history on this mask. Maybe that'll come in future stories. We see sort of this man, you obviously sense the shadow in Ben, the dark side in Ben, and he sort of tells Ben that. And we see Luke trying to hurry him up here. I think Luke has sensed it as well at this point, but isn't too worried about it. Because he doesn't want the young lad hearing about it. So Luke's like last chance. And then Ren drops the helmet on the floor. And the reason why that flashback's so important is because this is where Ben's gone back to in the present timeline and found the helmet. And he puts it on, and it's a comlink to the Knights of Ren, and the Knights of Ren tell him where they are. And then Ben turns around, and those three Jedi have arrived. Hennix, Fo, and Ty have followed him. I think there's a tracker in like Ben's ship, and that's how they followed him there.
Yeah, there is. I think they reference that as well.
And that is how episode issue 2 finishes. Like cliffhanger ending, which was really cool. For me, like I love that. I love that we sort of got the Jedi Temple. I love that they brought Lor San Tekka into the story. because again it ties into Ben cutting him down. So this book so far, all it's done is added layers to the sequel trilogy, which is really awesome. I like how sort of the Knights of Ren were no match for Luke Skywalker. Like he's fought all 7 of them off and then they've run away.
Mm-hmm.
And then they've actually, like the leader Ren's known that Luke would destroy him and just said, look, evacuate this bomb, let me go now. So again, it shows you just how powerful like Luke Skywalker is. We haven't had many stories of like from Return of the Jedi to like the current timeline as to like what Luke did.
Mm-hmm.
But like he is very powerful with the Force, and I'm glad we're getting tales. Although this isn't Luke Skywalker's book story, obviously because Ben was here, we're getting that tale here almost.
You're getting that extra insight.
Yeah, definitely. What were your overall thoughts on issue number 2?
Yeah, I think when Ren makes that comment about where he says, "Hey kid, are you sure this is the life for you?" It's really significant because this is a nodal point, right? Like it's I say it's a nodal point. I think the reason that we're thrown back to this moment is because it's the first time somebody has said potentially out loud or asked them the question, like, is this the life for you? Because we've already seen that, he's manifested or he has some sort of link where he can hear at this point to him. We don't know if he has the context of what the voice is in his head. To him it could just be a voice. We don't know how much Ben knows about that. I think it's a really poignant moment where he's being asked out loud, and especially so because it's in front of Luke. And Luke doesn't remark anything. Like he doesn't react to it, if you know what I mean. So he says, "You do know there are other paths, right?" This is from Ren, and then and all Luke says is "last chance," and it's like leave, and it's almost like he's trying to protect Ben at this point. It's like it's just a conversation that he just doesn't want to have. And so, like, I know this falls right towards the end of that second issue, but it's actually a really significant moment in the in Ben's kind of ontological process, I guess, like the creation of him as a character.
Yeah, definitely. I think it also ties in the fact that, as mentioned earlier, they haven't had the conversation with him about his grandfather either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and then they're avoiding the same conversation here about the dark side of the Force.
Mm-hmm. It's difficult.
Where obviously good reasons, but it's like the wrong. It's like they're making the wrong decision for the right reasons. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. I mean, it flips back to reality though, in the world that we find ourselves in again today, because it's like, are you doing more harm than good by telling somebody? I don't know. This is very situational, but like it's all about if you think of, I don't know, children for argument's sake, it's like how much context do we give them about things? Where's the balance between like protecting somebody and making them aware of something, and can that have adverse effects if you keep something from somebody? Like, what is the right time to inform? This is me rambling here, Pete, because it's a tricky one, but I think, as I say, the reason this is so poignant is because this is like it's a big concept. This isn't simple. This isn't like a simple, we're just choosing not to tell him here. It's very purposeful, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And again, it ties into sort of, as I said, like Star Wars is mainly about hope, but also like sort of human decisions and human choices and how the soul and the mind work together.
Yeah, you're right.
In us as a race, and obviously like George is like very much about that, and about like like making the right decision, and making choices.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously here Luke makes a choice not to reference it, and he makes the choice for the right decision. So he makes the choice for the right reasons, but it's the wrong decision. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And that happens in real life as well. And I think like one of the lessons of Star Wars that like gives always a chance to make a different decision. So like you might make a bad decision like now, but tomorrow you'll get another set of decisions to make, and guess what? You can make those however you want. So just because you've done bad in the past or wrong in the past doesn't mean you can't make a better decision in the future. So obviously, like, and obviously Luke ends up facing Ben at the end of the Last Jedi, where like he knows he can't really fix what's happening, but he confronts that fear and like he faces him because that's what Ben deserves.
It's big. It's high
but
concept.
Yeah, very, very much. And it's in everyday life. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I'm sure everybody's been nasty to someone in their life. I've been nasty to people. Not on purpose, and like not a lot, but like there's times when I have, and like, but it means the next day I can not be nasty. Do you know what I mean? Like, and you can sort of help someone. Do you know what I mean? Instead of, like, I think the idea is that, like, don't let sort of what you've done define you. Yes, you've done it, and it's definitely, you can't take it back, but you can make a different decision going forward. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think this again. This is going big here, Pete. But it's because it's this Star Wars is so powerful because it holds some really powerful messages, right? And there's some really powerful reflections of the world and of people, as you say. But it's because of the format that it's delivered in. Do you know what I mean? Like it has like the drama, it has the backstory, it has like all of this cool, like technology. Like it's in a different realm, and the reason that I think people engage with it so much is because it does reflect this world, but it's not this world, if that makes sense.
No, definitely.
So yeah, I'm here for it.
Good. So going into issue 3 starts with another planet, the Midrim, Varnak. So again, like as I said before, like when they're not naming planets, it's very much on purpose, because every other planet that doesn't, we've never heard of Varnak before. Do you know what I mean? But like this one gets its name. So like, and then they're keeping the names of the other ones hidden for like either for a reason or to keep the sense of mystique. If that makes sense. So Luke's Jedi Temple, we don't know where that is, and that ice world, the saw Knights of Ren. They haven't told that for. They've chosen not to tell that to sort of keep the mystique as a storytelling tool in the comic. So on Varnak, it's in the Midrim. Knights of Ren are just chilling at a bar. It's a cantina. There's other people there as well. Ben walks up. Obviously, in the last panel, the last issue, the Jedi confronted him, but we haven't seen what happened. But Ben here is a bit more worse for wear. He's got cuts on his face and his robes are ripped.
Looks pretty roughed up.
He does indeed. And sort of Ren takes his helmet off, starts talking to him. Again, he's a very chatty man, and wants to know what happened and why he's here. And also tells him that we need a good kill for you to join her. And then Ben's like, I killed the Jedi. He's like, Luke Skywalker. Snoke said maybe he'd say that, but he has his doubts, and so do I. Skywalker's stuff will come. And obviously, as we know in the last issue, he's met and fought Luke and knows how powerful he is. And he's like, no, not Luke, someone else. So I think, oh no, has he killed someone? And that's when it does the flashback to the Outer Rim, to Elfrona, just before he set off for this planet he's on now. And then we see sort of Ben fighting off 3 of them, although it looks like Ty's not really getting involved too much. And Ben again is like, he's blocking them. And another thing, it's quite manipulative here by Ren. Ren's asking Ben to retell the story. And when Ben's like not giving much detail, he's like, no, like give us more detail about that. I'm probing him for like more information. He wants to know the nitty gritty. And he wants Ben to admit like what he's done, even though Ben might not be proud of what he's done. So we see sort of him asking questions, and then he's like, oh, tell me about these Jedi you killed, you must know them. And again, like another flashback to the sort of, Luke without the beard. So not so long after Return of the Jedi, I wouldn't have thought, maybe within 10 years. And it's that temple in the background, it's daytime, and they're all sort of young Jedi Padawans using the Force. And I get the impression this is maybe just after Luke's probably not long not long after Luke started the temple.
Mm-hmm.
And we get to meet Vo a bit, and Vo's a bit like, why is Ben so much stronger? And Luke's like, Ben isn't stronger, Vo. That's not how it works. And we see that Vo sort of loves to fight and sees it as a competition a little bit. And then he asks about Hennix, and we see all that Luke, and they've got that holocron, which they must have found from that Jedi temple they were in, with Laws on Ticker. And sort of Luke tells them about the holocrons and how they're based on teachings held inside. And it opens up, and there's like a hologram of a Jedi. Hello, Searcher. I will guide you on your way. And Hennix is a bit like blown away by that. Just to let you know, that's another like throwback to the High Republic, which is a big publishing initiative coming next year. Which is set 100 years before the Phantom Menace. And the Jedi Order of the High Republic era. And then that is Ava Chris. She's not named here, but she will be appearing in that storyline. And Charles Soule, who is the writer of this book, I believe, is writing the first book of that run, I believe. Yeah, so the High Republic, it's called Light of the Jedi, and it's coming in January, I believe. It was written by Charles Soule. And Ava Chris was created for that book. And here we see, obviously, she would have put herself in holocrons to be passed on. So again, this is where the sort of the continuity and like the flow of Star Wars is so subtle and awesome. Where as you dive into more of these books and more of these projects and more of this multimedia that they've got, like there's loads of little bits that like again, like knowing that doesn't change this, but because it does, it just melds it all together into like one like awesome story. And because it gives it that history, it makes it feel real.
Yeah.
Like almost as real as like Egyptians or like the pharaohs, or like, do you know what I mean? Or when you go to a museum and you learn about like Athens and that type of thing, like that history that builds itself on like our mythology. That's like grounded in history, and like Star Wars is the same thing, which again why it makes it so real, and it's why I think it has such a big fan base, is because it's not real, obviously, but because it grounds itself in the same sort of techniques and lore that our mythology does. That's based on sort of I don't know what the word would be. Sort of, I don't know, like, you know, if you go back to sort of that Egyptian era or that ancient Greek era, that like were real, but we tell stories about them now as if like they're not.
Yeah, it's just like an alternative reality.
Yeah, definitely, and because it has that aspect to it, I think that's what makes it so like phenomenal.
I agree.
And then we get his connection. So essentially, Ren's asking Kylo for his connection to each of the three's fought, which is quite like a bit of a nasty move, really, because he's wanted it. Oh, like these are people you actually know, and I want you to tell us why you know them, and then I want you to tell us why you hurt them. Like, do you know what I mean? So it's like he's sort of opened up the wounds more, so to speak.
I feel like this is a test, though. Do you know what I mean? Like Ren's trying to figure out. He's trying to suss Ben out. He's trying to figure out. You know, we don't know if he's doing it for his own pleasure, in terms of like, you know, he wants to see Ben struggle, or whether he's trying to assess whether or not Ben is a good fit for the Knights of Ren, because it, you know, to kind of be able to assess how he feels about the kill, where his moral compass is, where he sits in terms of like the light and the shadow.
Yeah, definitely. And then we see sort of him talking about Ty here. You see him and Ty sitting down by the river having a conversation, and Ty's very much like, oh, you keep things locked about yourself. But they have a nice conversation here where like, and Ty says to me, "You're not as bad as you think. You sure are that. Don't be afraid of what other people will think. Just be who you are. The rest will follow." So you see Ty's very much like a good friend to him. And then you see Ben just tells Ren Ty was Ty. But then you see Ren be like cryptic, but I think I have a good picture. So I think get back to the fight, and then it goes back to the fight where Ben's fighting him, but again he's like not trying to kill them still, which is a good thing. And then he ends up like throwing one throwing Vo off a cliff, but then he catches Vo with the Force,
Mhm.
what he's trying to, and Hennick sees it, and Hennick runs up and chucks his lightsaber. Ben says murderer. Again, like not realizing, like, well, actually, no, Ben's trying to save Vo.
Mhm.
And you've thrown his lightsaber at him, which means Ben's had to turn around and block your lightsaber, which means Ben's had to let go of Vo. So they've caused him to let go of Vo there. And luckily, Ty catches that, but it's like, you know, he's fighting you because you've chased him across the galaxy to here and turned up again when your lightsaber's turned on. So, like, what's he meant to do? You're making him fight, and then he's defeated Vo there, but then trying to save her, and you've made him let go of her again. Luckily, Ty's there for the save.
Mhm.
But Ben turns around and he does attack. Does send his lightsaber back at Hennick and kills him by the looks of it.
Mhm.
And then we see him sort of use the Force to throw Ty and Vo into the temple. And then he brings the temple front down in like a very powerful use of the Force. Brings those big statues down, locking them two in. Because again, he doesn't want to kill them. He's just killed Hennick, which he didn't want to do. They've sort of forced him to do that. And he's just done that. And then we see sort of they're like, oh, we're not quite sure about you yet, but we'll let you join and see what happens type of thing.
Mhm.
Then you see Ben rock up and he's sort of dressed all in black.
Yep.
Very reminiscent of his father.
Yep.
So one thing I loved how he looked like Han Solo. I thought was really cool. Again, he's like trying to sort of run away from his past. But here he is. He's not dressed like a Jedi anymore, but he's dressed like his dad, which I thought was cool. And then I like how his lightsaber's on his shoulder, and like a shoulder holster behind his back, which to me is very reminiscent of how. Remember when Rey sends him the lightsaber using the Force at the end of Rise of Skywalker,
Yes.
and he pulls it out from behind his back?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's almost like the exact same motion, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, I like that. I like the continuity.
So yeah, it's very much like George Lucas once said, like Star Wars is like poetry at rhymes. So like here again, like it's very like it's almost like a rhyming stanza. Like we've got the lightsaber on his shoulder there, and then we're going to see him in the future pull the lightsaber out from the same position type of thing. And he's like, again, Ren's, let's go find something to burn. So again, the rites are very much like sort of just anarchists, really. And then we cut to scene Vo and Ty sort of stuck in the temple, but they managed to get out. And sort of they have a conversation. But Ty's very much like, I think he's lost. So he's like worried about Ben before very much like, I just want to see this end. And that was the end of issue 3. Very fast one, very fast paced one.
Yeah.
Obviously, I like how they sort of told it in flashbacks and then told it with Ben telling the story to Ren. It was a cool like use of storytelling within the comic, I thought.
Yeah, I think so too.
What was your favorite part of that issue?
I really like the part that you pointed out where you do see the resemblance between Ben and Han Solo. Because I got that as well as soon as it takes up quite a bit of the page, but it's striking, isn't it? Because it's the first time you see him out of the robes.
Yeah, so I mean that's like it's like 3/4 of it's like the whole page panel, and it's got 2 small inserts over the bottom.
Yeah.
But essentially, like it's like a full body shot of Ben on the page in this new getup.
And his stance, he's got like he's got a powerful stance about him, and I just think like this is where it's this canvas is trying to it's symbolizing change, I would say.
Yeah, it's symbolizing change, but it's also like he's gone from looking like his uncle to looking like his father. So again, as much as he's trying to escape his past and his family,
yeah, you're right.
It's subtly sort of saying that law he thinks he has, actually he hasn't.
It's like he's seeing a complete change, and we're seeing as the reader that's not the case. It's that again. It's that use of irony, I think.
Definitely. And I love how like the very sort of last bit of the story is obviously Hennix is dead, and then we see the Jedi, and Vo's like, I don't care about where Ben Solo's path takes him, Ty. I only care about where it ends. And then, which again is just being a bit like of an arse there.
It's vengeful.
And then a little bit, yeah. And obviously, I get your feels because like what's happened. Again, it's all part of the master plan of like Snoke and perhaps Palpatine. Do you know what I mean? To set this up, but they're doing exactly what he wants them to do. Do you know what I mean? But Ty's like, I know Vo. I think he's lost. So like he's still thinking about Ben at this point, which I find was good. How like, at least Ty still like is still thinking of him. And then on to the final issue 4, Midrim, the Mind Moon of Mimban. So Mimban is from Solo, it's where Han meets Chewie. And this is the Mind Moon. So I don't know if this is like a moon that orbits that planet or not. I don't know, but I assume so. Again, we're getting like a reference here to a planet, which again makes the ones that don't stand out more. Like, is there a reason why they've not been named? So on this sort of Mind Moon, and the Knights are there. They've took over the place, and they're wanting something out of the leader of these miners. And Ren's like, I'm going to kill people. They're not going to tell us. And Ben's like, wait, there could be another way. And it goes to that, even though like apparently these Knights of Ren have the Force, the Shadow. You don't really see them using it.
Yeah, you're right.
And Ben's the one who's like, well, I can use the Force to get in his mind. And again, like it's poetic to like Force Awakens when you see him getting pulled down on his head to get the location of the map, and then also he tortures Rey the same way later on in the movie in the Force Awakens. So he gets in this guy's head, and he's looking for his mind. And he's like, gets the information he needs. I have it, the artifact, 3 levels down. And Ren's like, nice move, kid. And then Ben says, yeah, it's the variation of a Jedi mind trick. Snoke told me about it, but that was the first time I ever tried it. Wasn't sure if it would work. So again, Snoke's like, that's like a dark side thing to sort of probe people's minds like that. And in fact, as Snoke mentioned it to him, so again, he's been like grooming him for a while. And then you see the Knights kill everyone. And then we see more of Snoke speaking to him. The Jedi believed that endless rules and codes of behaviour made them stronger, when in fact it made them rigid, and so they were even more easily broken. We see Ben here, like, but Ren, you said you would release them. I did. And like, so like, you see how Ben didn't want to kill the people that they were robbing.
Yeah.
And he thought using that mind control thing that he did would spare them their lives, but it actually hasn't. He's killed them anyway. That's because these Knights Ren are just ruthless anarchists.
You can see that he's not fully bought into the Shadow at this point. Like, he still looks lost. He still looks to be conflicted.
Definitely. So we'll see that the sort of trying to sort of get this artifact, and there's more guys where the artifact is. They're looking for something called the Mind Splinter, which we don't know what that is.
Yeah, I was wondering about that.
So Mind Splinter, so to me, so there was a book released and I don't think it's canon anymore. So I think when Star Wars came out in 1977, and then I think in case if Empire Strikes Back didn't get made, they like wrote this book. I think it was wrote by Alan Dean Foster. I could be wrong on that though. And it was called like Splinter of the Mind's Eye. So like Mind Splinter of the Mind's Eye. So that's what it made me think of. Which I've not read that book, but it was like the unofficial sequel in case the movie didn't get made, and they told the different story to Empire Strikes Back. So it's very similar terminology. So it makes me think of that. That's why I wish Canon Junkie XL Ian himself was on the episode today, because he would probably know exactly what that Mind Splinter is. But sadly he couldn't work commitments. Ian couldn't be on today, but yeah. So like again, it's references something that they know about, and they've just found it, and it like makes us think, "Oh, what is that? Sounds cool." But again, we don't really know, and is it going to come up later? That type of thing. So it's quite interesting. And like you see them, Gordon Bent jump down and fight, and then while that's happening, the two Jedi turn up, Vo and Ty, and then obviously Ben sort of told Ren that these guys were dead. You know what I mean? And then two of them had turned up here. Who are they? And Ben's like the past. Never seen him pull that lightsaber out. And as you see that little panel there, pulling the blue lightsaber out, is very much similar to how he does it in Rise of Skywalker. So yeah, big battle ensues where it's like you've got sort of the Knights of Ren killing these people who found this mind splinter, trying to take it, and then Ben runs up to try and fight the Jedi. And the Jedi split up, so Vo jumps down to fight the Knights of Ren, save their lives, and then Ty's like, I'm gonna fight Ben and maybe try and save him, type of thing. And it gets a bit crazy, like lots of action going on. Ben's like, "How did you find me?" Because obviously he didn't go on his ship this time. But Ty's like, "Through the Force, we're connected, Ben." So should we getting a bit of like, obviously Ben's very much connected to Rey in quite a strong way. Obviously they're a dyad in the Force, is how it's described.
Yeah.
And you see Ben has maybe not the same connection, but a similar type connection with Ty here.
Yeah, yeah.
And Ben, excuse me, Ben's like, "For your sake, Ty, I wish we weren't." So he doesn't deny it there. He's like, "I just wish we weren't." And they end up having the lightsaber battle. While they're doing that, Vo's fighting Ren. And sort of we get this sort of back and forth. And sort of Ben's telling Ty that he didn't have a choice. Even my name isn't a choice. And I love this bit here because the dark side and the light both claimed me for their own the moment I was born. Do you know how that feels? And again, that sort of inner turmoil of no one knows how that feels, and it's it's a horrible feeling to sort of be going through that and sort of have no one to talk to either. It's almost like you can almost relate it to mental health issues in real life, which is obviously quite a big thing. And obviously he's been going through a lot and inside his head, being torn from the light side and the dark side. And then he's had Luke in the real life talking about the light side, and Snoke in the real life in his head talking about the dark side, and being torn, manipulated, and then probably having no one to talk to because can't go and talk to Luke about it. Do you know what I mean? Because he feels scared of what Luke might say or do. So sort of say that happened.
Well, he then goes to touch on about being about the expectations that come with that, with his heritage, right?
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, he's do you know what I mean? As we describe with his name, he's the prodigal child. Really, he's a Skywalker and a Solo. Like two rebellion heroes. One great pilot. Well, they're both great pilots, to be fair. But do you know what I mean? One's a renowned pilot, and the other one's the guy who defeated Darth Vader and the Emperor. And his uncle blew up the first Death Star. Do you know what I mean? So it's do you know what I mean? It's very hard.
Yeah, they
for him.
referenced that earlier on.
Yeah, and then here we see he disarms Ty, and he's like, "Kill me if you have to, Ben, or don't." And then Ben turns his lightsaber off. "Be the man I know where you are. Just be who you." And then his neck breaks. And I don't know if it's Ben or not.
I don't think it is Ben. So initially, I thought it was Ben, and I was shocked, because the last thing that Ty says to him, he looks shocked. It looks like he's kind of getting through to him, and then I think he turns around and Ren's there, and that's when he says to Ren, "You killed Ty."
Yeah. And he's like, "I sure did." Yeah, so it was Ren. So here we see Ren use the Force. He's used the Force to snap his neck, so we do get to see them use the Force here. And And that is where Ben, it's very same here, where, so here he's got one lightsaber in his hand, and he pulls the other one using the Force.
Mm-hmm.
And then he crosses them over to jump at Ren. And it's the exact same movement that Rey does when she pulls up the lightsaber Ben had been using against Palpatine.
Mm-hmm.
She pulls it up and makes the cross to block the lightning back at Palpatine at the end of Rise of Skywalker. It's the exact same move, like almost scene for scene, which I found again poetry, sort of again showing him and Rey how similar they are, how connected they are. That they even like using the same moves each other, not even talking about them. And he's like, "I am the Shadow." Tough talk, but you have been actually. Tough talk where I've actually been in a fight before, and there's sort of a bit of trash talking going on. And Ben and Ren fight, and then we see at the bottom of the panel, Palpatine's mouth. Now you will be who you are, who you're always meant to be. And to me, like, obviously, Palpatine says that in the Rise of Skywalker, the opening, I have been every voice you've ever heard in your head. So it makes you think, although for all these issues, we talk about the thought bubbles and it being Snoke in his head. And what if it was actually Palpatine, actually in his head pretending to be Snoke, or was it Snoke on the orders of Palpatine? It gets confusing, but either way, he's being manipulated big time from a threat very far away. And then here we see, yes, my boy, yes, we see Snoke again with a thought bubble. So to me, it's sort of insinuating that Palpatine's speaking. And then Snoke's actually the voice he hears in his head. And then we see his mother, Ben, oh no, Ben. And then we see Vo's face. We see them fighting. Other people think I'm special. I don't. That's Ben talking to him. Ben's defeating him here. And then we see this is a great panel, top right. Uncle Plut with a young Rey. You feel that feels cold, and that's Rey. Obviously, in the desert, so it's not cold. And obviously, so it's talking about their connection they've got now. So she's feeling something because Ben's going through something. And, do you know what I mean?
And it's always been there.
Yeah, so sort of saying that, like, obviously this died in the Force. Obviously, they've sort of, with the page before, Ben doing the exact same move with the lightsabers that Rey does in the movie. And then obviously Rey feeling this coldness as Ben turns. And then we see Palpatine again. Yes, yes, claim your birthright and strike him down. And then we see Ben stab Ren. And then Ben says, he has your good death. So he gives him the good death. And then we go back to Vo, who's trying to grab a lightsaber. And then Ben uses the Force and pulls it out of hand. Ben, you killed him. You killed the Knights of Ren. You killed the Knights Master. Of course I did. I'm a murderer, remember? You're not a Jedi, Vo, and you never will be. There's no one left to train you. And then she's like, no, oh no. And then he uses the Force to grab Ren's lightsaber. And he stabs her with Ren's. And he says, why do you even want to live? That's what he says as he stabs her. So this is the first, like, he's actually like, you know what I mean? He hasn't killed Hennick by accident. He didn't want to kill Ty, and then Ren killed Ty. But then here, he actually like stabs an unarmed.
It's like that killing of Ren has it's cemented him. Do you know what I mean? It's taken over him.
100%. So for me, like that moment there is sort of like the moment where you could say it's a bit like when Anakin decides to kill the Tusken Raiders who killed his mum.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then that's the moment there where he strikes her down unarmed. And then you see the Knights kneel to him. And it's never explained whether he actually gets this mind splinter or not. I mean, he wasn't particularly bothered by it, so maybe he left it there. But you do see the Knights of Ren ship fly away, and then that place so it blows up behind them. So they've either stolen this mind splinter or it's been destroyed. And maybe we'll get that in a future story. And then we see Ben, a topless Ben, looking hench. So it's very reminiscent of the Ben was seeing Last Jedi
Yeah.
when he's topless. We see him sort of working on his lightsaber. Are you familiar with how this dark side have red lightsabers?
I'm not. I'd appreciate a bit of insight.
So, essentially, you make them. The kyber crystals are almost sentient. Is how I like to explain it. Also, you play Jedi Fallen Order when you go to Ilum and find your crystal, and you can't. There's loads of crystals in there, but like they hide and they don't glow, and like they're sentient and they're attracted to you as a person. And the colours when you find them, sort of different colours, find different people type of thing as well. So you can't actually get red. You can't find red ones. So if you obviously there's a red one in Ren's lightsaber, so you could just use that. But the idea of like fully turning to the dark side is that you have to bleed the crystal. So because it's sentient, what you do is you pour your malice, your negative thoughts, you meditate with it, and like pour all that into it, all your hurt, or your anger, or your feelings into it, and it bleeds. It bleeds for you, and it turns red. So you might notice that Ben Solo's lightsaber, Kylo Ren's lightsaber, is very much like it's like jagged and like it sparks a lot. It's unstable. So the reason why that is because his kyber crystal's cracked. That was explained in like the visual. I don't know. You'll get into this later. Now you're on the gravy train of Star Wars. So there's these awesome books actually written by Pablo Hidalgo, who I mentioned, who's a big part of the story group. Called they're called the visual dictionaries, and it has pictures of like everything from the movies and like brief little captions about them. So like in the one from the Force Awakens, like it's got his lightsaber, and it's like Kylo's cracked crystal. So his crystal's cracked, and that's why it's unstable.
Do you know, I've pre-ordered a book by Daniel Wallace, the Lightsaber Collection, which is a hardcover, and that's out the end of this month on the 25th of October. And as I say, it's called the Lightsaber Collection, and so I'd expect to find out a little bit more about the crafting of a lightsaber in that, because I think that's what it's all about. It says each spread features a detailed illustration of each saber, and allows people to see the intricate details in the hilts, and the brilliance of each energy blade as well. So I'm looking forward to kind of reading through that and finding out a little bit more about sabers themselves, actually.
Yeah, no, definitely. So as you say, yeah, he's got his blue one. He puts it in his hand. He takes the blue one out of his lightsaber, puts it in his hand. He's screaming. You see his eyes go yellow, which is like a sign of the dark, fully turned to the dark side. Happened to Anakin. And then we see sort of it begin to sort of bleed and as you can see there, you see Luke, Han, Chewie, Lando, Ty, his mom Leia, and so what actually happens, mate, is that because he's still torn by the light. So the crystal starts to bleed and go red to become a dark side saber, and then it cracks because he's not all bad. He still has good thoughts. So usually that would just bleed and just go red and wouldn't crack. You put it in, that's why all the Sith have like normal blades. They're still clean blades, not jagged. But his cracks in his hand, if you look in that picture there, it cracks because he's still torn by the light. And he puts it in his lightsaber, and you can see it's like unstable, like it flies out his hands. And then that's why he puts those side bits on it to make it so he can actually use it. But that is because he can't even bleed the crystal properly, because guess what? He's not the big bad. He's done bad things, but he's not. Those don't define, like, you know what I mean? And that's why it's cracked, and that's why he has to put those exhaust ports on the side to make it a crossguard.
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, so we finally get that. So I remember, like, when we first got the dictionary in 2015, it was like, it's cracked. I was a bit like, oh, my first thought was like, oh, I wouldn't have, like, he stole Luke's lightsaber after the hood collapsed on him, and the lightsaber got damaged in the collapse of the building, and then he turned it red, and then he bled it afterwards. But no, him trying to bleed the crystal actually cracked it because like I said, he's still torn by the right side of the Force, which to me says that he's not. Don't give it on him yet. He's, do you know what I mean? He's not. He hasn't gone all the way. Which obviously, as we now know from watching Rise of Skywalker, he hadn't gone all the way. So yeah, and that's the end. Is that scene with him like igniting the cross guard? So I love that last bit about how we got actually a history of him bleeding the crystal and why he needs the cross guard was really cool. And
I like it too. It's really cool.
What were your sort of favorite parts about that issue?
I really like the imagery of the other knights like bowing to him.
Yeah,
and
because it's like they know Ren quite a lot. Do you know what I mean? They've been with him for a long time.
Yeah.
So you think maybe they might they'll just kill Ben for revenge, but like no, they'll just kneel down.
I don't know though. Everybody seems. I mean, I think the one thing about Star Wars is rank really seems to be held in high esteem. Obviously with a few exceptions that are really necessary to the story. I think it's telling, like it's true to that. Do you know what I mean? It's almost like the fact that he's killed Ren. It's really elevated his honor.
Yeah,
and I think that's I like the way it's not disputed. And before that, where he goes ahead and kills Vo, like that happens in a split second. And I really like the way it like comes to a head. You see the change, like the collection of all four of them, they really do tell a story. Like there's a thread between them. And I think I just think it's really good. I think it's great, and I like the way again it changes towards the very end, as you say, when he's constructing a saber. Again, it changes. The colors change, like it takes you to a different place.
Yeah, definitely. I think for me, I love that panel where you see like Snoke and Palpatine, and it's like sort of telling you like, oh, like as we know when once we've seen the movie Rise of Skywalker, that like Palpatine's behind Snoke, but yeah, you see that like it insinuates that they are. So obviously, like this would have been issued like after the movies, people would have known that, which is good. I like how he does like kills Ren for making him want to fight his friends and kill his Jedi, and then after he's done it, he then like stabs her unarmed, and it's a bit like, that's where he's made a mistake, and it's like in that idea of like you can make mistakes, but the next day you can make different ones. I love it when they're bound down to him. That definitely, to me, that's a bit like we don't know who created the Knights of Ren and how long they've been around for. But to me, it says, what if like, because Palpatine goes a long way in the prequels and the original trilogy to like set things up to turn Anakin, and also set things up to become Chancellor and then the Emperor. It's like a very long game he's playing, and he manipulates everything. So I wonder if Palpatine like created these. Maybe they don't know about it, but maybe he started them or got someone to start them for him, and he knows how they work. And then he knows that like Ben will kill the other Ren, then he'll become the leader. Because when we watch Rise of Skywalker, when Ben turns up at the end, the Knights go to fight him. When really it would be a case of like, oh well, he's still our leader, whether he's got a blue lightsaber or not. Like, do you know what I mean? But they do like defend the Emperor in that moment. So like maybe there's more than meets the eye, and there's definitely a lot more. Again, one of the things about this whole book was that it answered a lot of questions, but it also left a lot open. So like it answered about like Ben didn't burn the temple down.
Yeah.
But it didn't tell who. It shows you Ben bleeding his crystal and shows you how it got cracked. Answers that like outright, which is brilliant.
It's just another part of it.
But definitely, yeah. But then it leaves a lot unspoken. Little things like the mind splinter, like what is that? Is it just a MacGuffin, which is essentially something that's a plot point to get someone somewhere? doesn't mean anything, or is it not? Like I say, because it ties into that book, Splinter the Mind's Eye, like some of that word, and is it just that sounds good, so they've used it, or is it a case of does it mean something? But yeah, like I love that about this all 4 issues really was about sort of it answered questions, but also left a lot open. So again, that's one of the best things about being a Star Wars fan is that there's so much left unsaid that you can sort of daydream about it, have conversations about it. That's what makes it so fascinating. I loved how like Tony is throughout the whole thing. Like he is trying to get away from them. He doesn't want to kill them, and he only kills them at the very end. And then just when you think he's fully evil because he's killed her and because he's killed Vo and killed Ren, he then goes to bleed his crystal, and then he can't even bleed that correct because guess what? He hasn't fully turned.
It's very cool.
Yep. As a first like Star Wars comic, has it made you want to sort of dive in?
It
and get
has,
more?
yeah. I think it's dangerous. It's very dangerous, Pete. Because I could see that I could easily end up spending a fortune, you know. But there's so much out there, you know, beyond the comics as well. There's so much in terms of like literature or like other sorts of like media you could buy. I definitely want to kind of almost like repeat the exercise, I guess, for some of the other kind of heroes, just to find out a little bit more context about how they end up appearing as we see them throughout the story, you know. So yeah, I'm definitely gonna end up getting more. I think perhaps the Vader collection's next. And there were quite a few runs. I know you've mentioned before about in the Vader collection. So I think that's probably next on my list.
Yeah, so I think there's like maybe 3 different Vader collections now. So obviously each 3 is like a different story. So for me, like you've obviously loved this one, The Rise of Kylo Ren by Charles Soule. So I would start with his run, which was like the second Vader collection, I believe, in the new canon, which was Star Wars, Darth Vader, Dark Lord of the Sith. That was a 25-issue run. It's 4 volumes, so it's like 4 of these trade paperbacks that we've read. And it tells the story of Anakin or Vader. I think the first page is like him waking up as Darth Vader, and it starts there. And that even deals with him finding his own crystal to bleed. Because if you remember at the end of Revenge of the Sith, Obi-Wan takes his lightsaber and he actually gives it to Luke in New Hope. So Vader has to then find his own lightsaber and then bleed it. So you get a bit of that in there and other things as well, which is stuff that obviously bleeding the lightsaber we're getting there and Vader doing it. And then in this book, Charles Soule does it again with Kylo. So it's like very much like, again, like say Star Wars' poetry, Charles Soule's almost like using that in his own, in telling the different stories. And then we get the Jocasta New thing in the Jedi Temple there as well. I don't want to say too much, I don't want to spoil too much, but I would say probably start with that. You know, it's 4 volumes, so you know what you're getting into. It's not ongoing at the moment. It ran for 25 issues and ended that run. So you know that you up front you're paying for 4 volumes of comics, and you're getting that whole story, which is pretty cool. So yeah, I'd probably start with there. Obviously, you get sort of, and again that obviously Charles Soule I think did such a good job in this comic, sort of going between the struggle between light and darkness within Kylo Ren, Ben Solo. And he does similar things in that Darth Vader run, where obviously like Darth Vader has not long been Darth Vader, so there's still a lot of Anakin about him, the way he thinks, and the hurt of, I know it was just last week he had a wife and he had a best friend. And then when that comic starts, doesn't have a wife, he doesn't have a best friend anymore, doesn't have a family of the Jedi Order, because it's been destroyed and he's destroyed it. And it deals with a lot of that and the struggle between that as well. So I think like a lot of things you love about this book, you'll love about those books because it's similar. And you get a lot of another book that's brilliant, sort of dealing with Anakin and Vader and sort of the pull between light and the dark, which is again similar to this Rise of Kylo Ren story, is Lords of the Sith by Paul S. Kemp. That you might be interested in. That's a novel. So it's obviously, I'm trying to think. I think it's quite biggish from Star Wars wise, but it's not too big. But I definitely recommend Lords of the Sith as well. If you're enjoying that sort of pull between the light and the dark, like I said, it's a different writer. But yeah, I definitely recommend loads of this as well. Again, I'm not going too much detail because I want to spoil it for you. But
Yeah.
that deals with sort of Vader still being Anakin, if you know what I mean, a little bit, and still having those sort of thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
That I definitely recommend. But yeah, maybe, like I said, maybe get those Dark Lords of comics next. Like I said, you know what you're getting into with them, you know how many they are. And then if you really dig that, and you really dig the sort of the same story told from Vader's perspective, then maybe that could be your sort of the book you read next, Lords of the
Yeah.
Sith. But yeah, it's crazy. Like once you start, like it's just mental. Like I try to keep up with all the canon. I'm quite behind on books wise, to be fair, and comics. Which is why I was glad this Rise of Kylo Ren was just like a 4-issue one-off, because you could sort of pick it up and go. Where I'm behind like 4 or 5 volumes in the Star Wars ongoing issue at the minute. But that is good and definitely worth it. And like I said, my plan is to get back on track with that. But no, yeah, so I'm glad you really enjoyed it. Definitely can be dangerous. The one thing they're very good at is making money.
Yeah, of course. Well, it's just because, like I say, there's so much out there. One of the things that I really admire about Star Wars is the fact that, as you say, so much goes into kind of protecting it in terms of making sure that there is that consistency across all the releases of all this extra content. It's almost like actually, I feel like the films, there's a whole wealth of stuff out there besides the films. So I think like for some people, the films are really just a starting point. There's like, this you could take this obviously 2 ways, but there's literally a whole universe outside of there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. I think obviously you got to remember, like, so obviously the next film is meant to be 2022, and like we don't know what movie that is, but I think it's meant to be like a standalone one, probably directed by Taika Waititi.
Yes.
But obviously you got to remember, like, Taika's he hasn't started shooting Thor: Love or Thunder yet. And he's doing this after, so like that's not starting anytime soon because of the COVID situation. So like that movie's going to get pushed. So the next big thing really is the High Republic, which is the sort of mass publishing initiative coming from Lucasfilm and Disney. So that's going to be totally like a introduction novel by Charles Soule. So again, he wrote his comic, he loved it. But it's then getting told across like novels, across young reader books, across YA books, across comics, all telling sort of different stories of this one big story, if that makes sense. So like that's going to be huge to get into when that starts. There's just been a panel at obviously New York Comic Con was meant to be this weekend, but it was obviously didn't go ahead because of COVID. But it was like an online convention, and there was like a panel on there which I've shared on our Facebook page on the Star Wars Facebook page, but it's available. You can just search on YouTube; it'll come up. If you go to JediNews.com as well, you'll probably find it on there. So they're gearing up. That's like their next big thing, and it's going to be like, again, like different stories, but all about the same era that we haven't been to before in Star Wars. So that's going to be a big thing, I think. And if that's good, which I'm sure it will be, I'm really looking forward to that, because it's going to be like we're going somewhere new where we don't know much. And you're going to read one book, and then you're going to read a comic, and they're going to like reference each other.
Yeah, it sounds pretty cool.
The same way that like this Rise of Kylo Ren book references the sequel trilogy. So you're going to get that same sort of subtle sort of glue that glues all together. It's going to be brilliant. So I think that could be like, even if you do want to sort of dabble into the novels, because it is hard knowing where to start depending on what you're into, but like if you get a January, that's like the perfect starting point, because you get book 1 of that story arc, and then all these other ones are going to come out that you can do afterwards. And again, like I said, they know how to make money, because you're going to have to like, you'll read one and you'll be like, I need to know what happens in this, and you'll be
That's
buying
exactly it. That's what happens, Pete.
Yeah, and you'll be buying all the media, but like I said, if it's a good story, it'd be worth it. But I think that brings an end to the episode. Thank you very much for joining us, Steve.
My pleasure.
Have you got any closing thoughts on the Rise of Kylo Ren?
I'd recommend that anybody who's interested in learning more context about any of these hero characters, looks at these other products out there. You know, like the comic runs, the other books and stuff as well. Because like for me, it's as you say, it really just is like a trickle effect. Like you get a little bit more of the story, and then you just die into know more. And it just really adds like there's so many things that I noticed when I went back and watched the films for the second time after referring to other sources and exploring more like little like nuances or references or even just think like things in the settings or the objects in scenes. Like there's a lot of things that are intentional. So closing thoughts would just be that I'd recommend anyone to kind of explore all of the other different sources, I guess, of information if you're looking to find out more about the universe, more about the characters, and add a bit more depth beyond the films.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, I've got the trade paperback which I got from Amazon, which was like a tenner, £10, so really good deal.
Yeah.
It is still available trade paper. It'll be available digitally as well for anyone who reads digital comics, and it's still available in your local comic book shops because I've been today this morning and I saw it on the shelf. Maybe so me and obviously Katie, who's been on the show a few times, we're going to be reading. There was a one-off collection called Dark Temple, and it's a prequel comic to Jedi Fallen Order, the game. And it tells the story of Sia and her master, I believe, during the Clone Wars. So we've got that comic. We haven't read it yet, but we're going to be reviewing that on a future episode. So, Steve, it would be great if you want to pick that up. Come and join us, and we'll review that one.
I think I'll have to. Yeah, I feel like playing Fallen Order today actually after having chatted to you. So I think I'll have to now. I've got no choice really, have I?
Definitely, yeah. And like I said, that's just a 1-volume run again, so it's like you don't have to commit too much. Do you know what I mean? It'll be a similar size to the Rise of Kylo Ren, maybe a little bit longer. So I'm not quite sure how many issues it was. I'll do a quick Google. We'll see how many issues it was, but I'm sure it will be no more than 6. Knights Temple.
Knights Temple, it's called.
Sorry,
yeah?
Dark Temple. Sorry, I don't know why. I'm thinking of Assassin's Creed when I say Knights Temple.
Yeah.
Knights Temple. So yeah, Dark Temple. It's available trade paperback. That's what me and Kate have got. And it was five issues, so it'll be one more issue longer than this Kylo Ren one. And I'm sure you'll be able to pick that up on Amazon, I would imagine.
Yeah, it comes up straight away.
There you go. So yeah, that's what me and Kate are going to be reading that soon and reviewing it on a future episode. So you're more than welcome to join us for that one.
Yeah, I'll be down.
Awesome. Have you got any social media? Where can the people find you if they want to talk Star Wars with you?
Yes, I'm on Twitter. At CQ on Twitter. Yeah, so you can find me there.
Awesome. Well, thanks very much for joining me, Steve. Thanks very much, everybody, for listening. May the Force be with you all.
Please follow us on Twitter at BoresStar. That's at BoresStar. And on Instagram and Facebook at Star Wars Podcast. You can also reach us on email at starwarspodcast@gmail.com. The Star Wars Show can be found on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Anchor, and wherever podcasts can be found. Please give us a like, subscribe, and don't forget to leave a 5-star review. May the Force be with you.